clicking. That's so weird. Happens every time. How's it going, gentlemen and ladies?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. How does this work? Can we just open it to questions? Can we say prepared speech? Because I always have a prepared speech. No? Just questions?
No questions?
Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll take off the questions from there.
My name is Michael Trucco. It's my first time here at ConnectiCon. I was on a show called EBattlestar Galactica with Tahmoh. I played a character named Samuel T. Anders. That's sort of what leads us to here, obviously. I've done a little bit of the convention circuit. This is my first time out here in New England. I'm thrilled to be at this convention. I think it's, thank you. I think it's done fantastically. I think it's run like a well-oiled machine. Had nothing but a great experience here, and I look forward to doing this one again.
Well said. I'm Tahmoh Penikett. I play the character Hilo on the show Battlestar Galactica. And yeah, I just have to agree with Michael, because he summed it up well. The con is really well organized, great people out here, very cute, quaint little town. Met some really kind and welcoming, hospitable people, and so far our experience has been really good.
Yes, sir.
Did you ever see the original Battlestar Galactica before you signed on to the new series?
I was aware of the original series, but I hadn't seen it. No, I was a kid when it came out. I think it came out in the late 70s. So I remember it being on television, but I certainly didn't go back to it to research, because I knew that we were an entirely different beast. We were the same show in name only. You know, the show and the tone had changed so dramatically with Ron Moore's interpretation. I came on to the show early in season 2, so I was late to the party. So my research was to go back and watch all of season 1 of the new series. So I did not watch the old series, no.
Yeah, I did. I'm not sure that it was as significant as I thought it was at the time, because I think it was a big deal for me being... Does anyone know the date? Was it like 78 or 79? I think I was like 3 or... I was like 4, but I actually remember the show, because I had some of the action figures. And I remember it being a big deal when I was a kid. The funny thing is, we did a military boot camp in preparation for the miniseries, and we got to see the pilot episode, which was kind of cool. So it was a little refresher. But again, just like Michael said, we took some of the excellent ideas they had with the original series, and we just sort of, we embellished and expanded on them, and as far as I'm concerned, we improved quite a lot.
So growing up, did you guys always know you wanted to be actors, or is that something that came kind of later on? Or was there something that kind of triggered that thought process that you wanted to go into acting?
That's a good question. I think from a young age, I kind of knew that I did. My father worked a lot, but he was an actor in university, as was his dad. And one of the things I did with my father a lot was we go to see films that he was interested in. I'd hear him critique them, and I think I got an appreciation for good quality drama, adult drama, from a young age. And I really appreciated film in that medium from a young age. And even though I grew up in northern Canada, there was always a part of me that kind of like imagined that I would do this eventually, or that I wanted to do it. There was other things I wanted to do. For a long time, I wanted to be a RCMP officer.
Is that right?
Yeah, when I was a kid, that's what I used to always draw. But yeah, I kind of always wanted to be an actor.
That's funny that Thomas said that. I grew up, my father was a police officer in a medium-sized town as a suburb of San Francisco in Northern California. So, it stands to reason that oftentimes you go into your father's business. Your father makes shoes and you become a cobbler, I mean, that just makes sense. And for me, I was around law enforcement. I always thought that I was going to be a cop. But something resonated with me at a young age, like Tom was saying, with film and television. In theater, I was fascinated by theater. I was fascinated by going to live productions. I wanted to know what was in that world. I was mesmerized by the world that they created on stage. When an actor left the stage or they exited through a door that went upstage, I wanted to know what was behind the curtain. I wanted to be part of that magic. I guess it's the whole, the curtain behind Oz. I wanted to be in that world. And I got into it in high school and grade school. I was doing, you know, theater productions just as a hobby. Never ever thinking that that would be even a possibility as a career, because that wasn't something that happened to a kid from San Mateo, California. That was something that happened to people in Los Angeles and New York. You know, I didn't even know that acting was a career that I could pursue because that wasn't around me. Nobody in my family, none of my friends, nothing. Nobody was in the entertainment industry at all. And I got into college and, you know, discovered the theater as just as an extension, as a hobby. And after doing my first audition, they somewhat convinced me to come and study theater as a major, which, you know, is a hell of a phone call to make back to the folks and saying, yeah, you know that university you all paying for? Well, I'm going to study theater. It's like, I hope that works out. And, you know, I was one of those rare cases where it did work out, but I had incredible support from my family, which means a lot. And next thing I know, this is, you know, I found what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, and it has taken me here. That's why I'm sitting in front of you guys. So, yes, sir.
Okay. Thanks for coming, guys. It's a great honor to have you both here.
Thanks for having us.
I have a question. There was a major Screenwriters Guild strike, I think around season 3 or season 4. And in my perception, it seemed there was a little bit of a change in the direction or anything like that. As actors, did you feel as if you were directed either differently, either before or after it, or did you notice any momentum on the set, or any change in that regards following the strike?
Yeah, there was a long 3 or 4 month break because of the writer's strike, and in anticipation of the writer's strike, we knew it was coming. So did the writers. They wrote what we thought, and we actually displayed as what we thought was going to be the finale episode of the series. So it definitely changed the tone of the show, because we all recall being out in the what was that part of Vancouver? Out in the
I think we were out in Tawasin.
Yeah, out in the where all the river wash and the beach, and we're filming the scene where we discover Earth has been completely decimated, and we were anticipating that there was the possibility that this could be the very last episode of the series ever. So upon, you know, fast forward to when we came back from the strike and we actually got to finish the series, there was a tonal shift, and I think that the writers had to scramble to kind of pick up where we left that episode and then rewrite another ending to the show. So there was a bit of a tone shift. I didn't notice a direction change. I think, you know, they picked up fairly linear, you know, they kept the storylines linear, but there was definitely a tonal shift.
Yeah, there was, I think it was a stressful time for everyone leading up to the strike with all the talk of it. I'll never forget Ron Moore giving a very emotional speech to everyone on the crew, because you have to understand, most of the crew that we had, and there was 100 plus people, had worked with us the entire time. And starting from the very beginning of the show, that's almost 6 years. You know, there's a lot of people who had families and they were depending on that show. We'd become a big family, so it was leading up to it. There was unfortunately there wasn't a ton of optimism, and that's why they were writing it that way. And it was a little bit somber. It was we even shooting those last episodes, and it's funny how things work out. The area that we shot in, I mean, we had an incredible DOP who could do magic with, you know, the HD that we shot on. He could, you know, adjust colors and mood and textures and filters just on the day while we were shooting, right while it was happening. But we were shooting and it was muggy and it was rainy, it was cold. It looked like a post-apocalyptic Earth. So that was unfortunately a little bit of the attitude. We even took to drinking one day. We were like, you know, it's one of our last days. And Douglas brought in a bunch of scotch and we're like, you know what? I think in a scene where nobody really has any dialogue, we're just kind of walking around in shock. There was definitely, I was optimistic that we were going to come back, but you know, a lot of our veterans were pretty worried that it could be the end. So again, like Michael said, you know, when we came back, there was also an excitement. It's like, you know what, we're not done. We're going to wrap this up properly. We knew that it was always said by Ron Moore that we were going to wrap up the show. You know, hopefully we got the full season in, which we ended up doing, which was great, but it was going to be wrapped up. And it was, and I thought justly so, and I'm just so happy that we had that opportunity to come back and wrap it up. And you know, we didn't have to end on that note, because it would have been a sour note to end on. It just wouldn't have been right. It wouldn't have done, it wouldn't have done the show justice at all.
Yeah, no way.
I'm Leo, and I'm with Conman. And just speaking of the stress, as a day in the life of an actor, what are some of the demands that you come across, and how do you deal with that?
Well, I think, the hardest thing in this business is not working. Most of us like to work. And for me personally, it's not so much about the money, it's about the consistency. I think that's the hardest thing. There's David Mamet famously said once, don't be the actor sitting around at the coffee shop waiting for the audition. Unfortunately, so many of us who get spoiled by film and television, which pays well, and if you've done it for a while, you get used to that money and that consistency, and it's something to always look forward to. There's work down the road. You've been picked up, or you've got another gig lined up. I think if I were to go back and do it again, there's a lot of work that I just would have done. Maybe it wasn't up to par, standard-wise, according to my agent or my manager or even myself. Maybe I thought I was better than it. You just gotta work. I've spent too much time, in between gigs where I'm just sitting around and, you have to flex that muscle. That's what we do. We love to make believe. We're actors. I want to be acting. I love it. When I get away from it, I'm like, oh, what's wrong with me? I'm depressed. I'm not busy enough. I found a little while ago, because the business has been a little bit slow as of late, and I just started memorizing lines from old monologues, ones that every once in a while I'll come across one that I really like and I'll keep. I was just trying to be active and busy. And a friend of mine was like, dude, that's great that you're doing that, but if you actually think you've got a bit of time where you're not doing anything, why don't you do a play? And I'm like, that's a brilliant idea. And it's something I hadn't considered for a while. So I think personally, for me, and I think for a lot of actors, it's just the dead time. It's not being busy. We want to work, we want to act, we want to make believe, we want to do it all the time. Get a lot of enjoyment from it. That's why we do this, man. We're living the dream when we're doing it. When we're on set and working, it's the best thing in the world. When we're not, we're like, you're thinking about the next gig.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief, but to expand on what Tahmoh was saying, the stress for the actor is the audition. The work is the gravy. It's the icing on the cake. The audition is the work. The job isn't the work. That's the part where you can start to relax and discover a character, but it's that audition, man. As an actor, your product is yourself. You sell yourself. If I'm a car salesman, or if I sell insurance and the product's not selling, you have something to fall back. You can blame the product. But when you step into a room and you're presenting the 2013 version of Michael Trucco, and they're not buying you. And that's the way you take it. It's usually not that personal, but it's impossible not to take this process personally.
It's all the rejection.
Yeah, you put out everything in a room just like this, and you might sometimes have 10, 12, 15 people watching you. They all confer when you leave the room, and they go, next. It was fine. We like it, it was fine. And it's impossible to book every job you go for, but you always remember the ones you don't. And that part, you have to just somehow plow through that as an actor. You have to just have that tough, thick skin. And the reward is when you actually do book a job, because eventually, you stay with it. There are roles that are right for you, and sometimes you just walk into the room and you're the guy. And other times you walk into the room and you want to be the guy, but you're not the guy.
Yeah. Well,
And you just have to congratulate the guy who did get it. Good for him. So, yes.
In between the times of acting and the shows that you're in, I know that from talking to the executives, they say you can't, take a job within a big company and be a self-starter, be someone that these companies will notice, and eventually they'll work with you. So is that something that you ever seen yourself, being a self-starter and producing your own content, and in between the time that you are back working on these movies and shows?
Yeah, I think that's the most logical avenue for any actor. And some of the greatest success stories are those who decided to take the reins into their own hands. And like Tahmoh said, you can't sit around waiting for the world to bring something to you, so you bring something to the world. And especially now more than ever, there's so many thousands of media outlets. Before, it used to be controlled by big 3 networks, 5 or 6 big movie studios, and that was it. And if you weren't in their game, you couldn't play. But now, people are making movies on these things, and they're actually making a dent, and people are standing up and noticing. So there's lots of avenues to take your own content. It's just you have to have the ambition and the wherewithal to do it. I find myself needing to have the time. My wife is working on developing a script, something that we've been talking about for the longest time, and she actually just started to sit down and do it and take the time to write out an outline, and I admire that ambition. I would definitely love to be able to take original material. Tahmoh and my wife and I, the 3 of us, were talking about it as recently as last night at dinner, throwing out ideas. We have the means, we have the capabilities, cameras. I mean, you can shoot movies on what you guys are shooting this on right now. and they shoot feature-length, full studio productions on very simple equipment. We definitely have the talent pool. We have friends, at all different levels. So I admire people who do it. I wish I could include myself. I plan to, but I wish I had that ambition to do it, and hopefully one day I will.
Yeah, I mean, well said. There's not much more to say to that other than, I think I have the same problem as Michael. I've always wanted to write. I've never been able to consistently do it. And it's one of those things, my father's a writer. I know a lot of writers, and, they get up every day and they write. Even if you're not very productive, you have to allot an hour or 2 hours and you have to try and write. You have to do it every day. That's what writers do. I have a hard time doing that. And it's seeing it through. We come up with brilliant ideas all the time. Yeah, especially after a couple of glasses of wine. Sometimes that helps. But sometimes these things work, and you do see it through. A few years ago, I produced and starred in with one of our dear friends, Alex Penikett. We did a short film, and man, that was a wake-up call to how difficult it is to actually do this, but at the same time, how easy and how accessible the community is. It really came together, all in all, quite easily. But there's so many steps involved. This is just a short film, 20 minutes, and I just recently helped a friend of mine produce another one, and so I'm trying to be more consistent in getting in there. And again, Michael and his wife and I were having a discussion last night. It's something we want to see through, and we have the means, we have the resources, and you have to do that these days. You can do it. It's very, very possible. The technology's there. So.
We'll go here first.
Is there any particular scene or maybe story arc or somewhere where you guys have had a really difficult time nailing it? Like really, maybe it was something as simple as just couldn't get it quite right. Anyone that sticks out to you?
So in Battlestar in particular, or just in the work? Oh yeah, it happens, man. I mean, I definitely have, especially in the beginning. I think, when you're starting off, one of the hardest things for a young actor is you question you doubt yourself a lot. And unfortunately, in my experience when I started off, I got a lot of bad direction. And it took me a while to realize that. Because instinctually, I knew it was bad direction. I had an actor literally a couple times telling me what to do with my face. No, you should be doing, scrunch it up like this. Things like that, where there was nothing there, and I shouldn't have done what I was told because I didn't trust myself enough because I was such a young actor. I was green. And if I had just gone with my instincts, I think the performance would have been much better. It's really hard to see that, the end result, and seeing that performance going, what the hell was I doing? Why did I listen to that guy? Mm-hmm. But as you do it, the more and more you do it, the more experienced you are, you begin to know and understand, and you also understand the directors you should trust, and when you get good direction. And sometimes you develop that relation. Hopefully it's over a long time, like we did with Battlestar. We had a number of directors that we worked with for a very long time. So sometimes they would ask you to do something that would be uncomfortable, that didn't feel right, but you went for the plunge because you trusted them, and you knew that what they said was probably, something you could be confident in. And oftentimes you saw the end result and you were so happy with it. But you often, it's challenging. That's why we do this. And I love doing challenging roles too. I want to take that chance, that plunge, and that's part of the reason we do this. Not that it's easy; it's terrifying at times.
Yeah. You got a question in the back?
I was just wondering, what was the feeling on the set when the show did it had its actual finale, and what did you think of the continuing stories in the storyline through Caprica and Blood and Chrome?
So, sorry, what was the first part of that question?
What was the feeling on the set during the actual finale of the
we got a little bit into this yesterday. I had a panel yesterday. Somebody asked me the same question. It's almost like when summer camp ends, or it's like when, coming to the end of high school, and everybody's kind of like, wow, that's it. We've been hanging out for all these years, and there was definitely that sort of somber sense of this was it. Everybody shot their own character's individual story. When that scene came up, there was that sense of finality, and it was like, oh wow. So there was it was a bit somber, but yet there was, like high school kids, there was a lot of play. Everybody it was a great time. I remember those last few episodes very fondly, despite the fact that I was in a 3.5-hour makeup job with bald cap and in a gooey, sticky, gross, milky tub for 6 weeks, while everybody else is just gallivanting, having a good time, and I'm in a nude-colored G-string, and a bald head. I was like, hey, everybody didn't want to touch me. But I thought, I loved the way our show winded down. I loved our finale, and I was very impressed with the beginning of Caprica. I know that the show sort of lost its direction, and it's just sort of wallowed away. But I remember Tom and I were at a screening at Universal, watched the pilot episode of Caprica, and the work that Esai Morales and Eric Stoltz and that cast was doing, and the story, and I was like, they got it, they nailed it. This is the passing of the torch. And I was very optimistic for Caprica. For whatever reasons, it didn't work out. There was a lot going on.
I do a lot of martial arts, we work out.
Yeah, I mean, it actually goes to what you were saying before. No, it's true. You were saying the stresses. That was a question you had about what are the stresses in the daily routine of an actor when we said the audition. It sounds really ridiculous and superficial, but there is, I get in some scripts, I did something, I forgot, on How I Met Your Mother or whatever it was, and you get to the page 3 in my first scene, it says, as he takes his shirt off, you're like, whoa. How did you just instantly assume? And there's this line about, look at his abs. I was like, well, that's assuming that I got abs worth looking at, so now I gotta get my ass back into the gym, because you saw some picture from 10 years ago where I had my shirt off, and I was like, I'm over 40, like, hold on a second here. And there's this expectation, because if you are, a certain size and you do work out, that you've got to maintain that. And you actually do have an obligation to maintain that. If you play the roles of a hero, or you're going through the forest toting guns and cut off shirts and you got a cool cut over your head, we have an expectation to maintain your physique. So while I enjoy staying in shape because it's just good for you, I kind of have to for the roles.
It's a requirement.
It's a requirement of the job, and it's, for better or for worse, it's great. But it just found that was the first time it struck me in my career that they just assumed that I was ready to just whip off my shirt. And I was like, wait a minute, guys, can we airbrush some abs in there? Because I'm not sure I have it anymore, it's more pear-shaped, so, yeah.
You get your balls busted by your friends outside of
Acting, your friends and family sometimes, about how vain we can be, but unfortunately it's part of the job. And it really is that case, until we get much older, where they don't want to see us with our shirts off. That's a given. Yeah.
One more question.
Sure.
Do you guys have any sort of favorite prank that happened on set? Something that really stood out in your mind, or something that you pulled yourselves?
You know what, I always get asked that, and there was nothing in particular that I remember. There was a lot of clowning around on set. If you've seen the show, it's very, very heavy material and quite dark at times. But if you saw us in between takes, oftentimes there was just such a levity and just handing around and joking, because we had to break from that heavy material often. Michael and I and a bunch of us it was Katie when we did the Demetrius arc. Was that 2 or 3 episodes?
That was at least 3.
I think it was 3-episode arc in 3rd season, and it was awesome. It was one of the best 3 episodes that I did in the entire series. It was middle summer. We were supposedly on a sewage recycling ship, and they had built an incredible set. And the ship was supposed to be hot and stinky and gross, and we're confined to the ship, and we're on this month-long mission, and people are starting to lose it. They're losing faith in our commanding officer, who was Starbuck at the time. And it was the middle of the summer. It was baking hot, and everything. They were so well written. Everything that happened in those episodes were awesome. It was a great experience, but there was some dark stuff that was happening. I mean, Gata, what happens to Gata?
Yeah, that's right.
And me having to take seize control from Starbuck, who's one of my best friends. There was so much stuff that was happening. But in between takes, we were doing jazz hands and dancing. We were joking around so much.
All the time.
Yeah, unfortunately, we didn't get a lot of footage of that. I was hoping to see some of that. But yeah.
I had a scene late in the last season where Anders is in the bed and he's been shot. He's hooked up to all this equipment and in a catatonic coma state. Don't talk much. And Katie Starbuck is by my side, and she's holding my hand, and she's professing her, all this emotion and love, and it's a really intense scene. And so, I'd get up and I'd get in this bed, and we'd have to break the tone sometimes with some levity. So Katie's off doing her thing, and so one of the prop guys and myself and the director, we worked out this thing where we took a broom handle and we stuck it under the bed sheet while I was laying in the bed. And then we bring Katie in, but she's doing her thing, so she's in the zone, so she comes in and she takes a knee and she's talking, and real slowly the guy with the prop starts picking up the broom handle right between my legs, so this broom handle's just going. She's like, oh, come on! So that was kind of fun. But yeah, you know, I mean, Tom was right. We had to create some levity because the tone of the show was so intense. So, yeah, we had a good time.
All right, very good.
All right, thank you guys very much.